My name is Natalie Wilkerson. I'm 42 years old, a former biblical studies professor at a small Christian college in Minnesota. 6 months ago, I died for 27 minutes, and in that brief moment, Jesus revealed why the Book of Jubilees was banned from the Bible and how its divine knowledge was kept hidden from believers. What I learned about time, sacred laws, and cosmic order changed my understanding of God's plan for humanity. What I was shown is urgent, and it demands to be told now, because it changes everything about the days we are living in. This is the shocking testimony of what was concealed, and why it matters today. But before we start, please let me know where you're listening from. It will be nice to feel closer, even if we're physically apart. Also, don't forget to like and comment on what you thought about this near-death experience testimony. Let's have a fair and open discussion so we can learn from each other on this channel. Enjoy listening. It happened on August 17, 2024. I had always struggled with an irregular heartbeat, a condition called atrial fibrillation that I'd managed with medication since my 30s. That winter morning started like any other. I was grading final papers in my home office when I felt a strange pressure in my chest. At first, I ignored it, attributing it to holiday stress or perhaps the extra coffee I'd had that morning. But within minutes, the pressure transformed into crushing pain that radiates down my left arm. I remember reaching for my phone, fumbling with the screen as my vision began to blur. I managed to dial 911 before collapsing onto the floor. The last thing I heard was my golden retriever Moses, barking frantically as my consciousness faded to black. What happened next would forever alter my understanding of Scripture and reveal why certain texts, particularly the Book of Jubilees, were deliberately excluded from the canonical Bible. When my heart stopped, I didn't immediately leave my body as some near-death experiences describe. Instead, there was a moment of complete stillness, a pause between worlds. Then I felt myself being drawn upward, passing through what I can only describe as layers of reality. Physical sensations fell away, replaced by a profound awareness that transcended my 5 senses. I emerged into an expanse of light so pure that it should have been blinding, yet somehow I could perceive everything with perfect clarity. In this light stood Jesus Christ. I recognized him instantly, though he didn't match the paintings and illustrations I'd seen throughout my life. His presence radiated authority and kindness simultaneously, a divine majesty tempered with compassion that made me feel completely known yet unconditionally loved. "Natalie," he said, "you have studied my word faithfully, but there are truths you haven't yet understood, knowledge that was intentionally kept from my followers." I was speechless, overwhelmed by being in his presence. Jesus gestured, and what looked like scrolls of light appeared between us. "You're familiar with the Bible as it exists today," he continued, "but do you know what's missing? Do you understand why certain books were excluded?" Before I could respond, Jesus touched one of the scrolls, and it unfolded into a luminous text I somehow knew was the Book of Jubilees. The Book of Jubilees contains divine truths about creation, my laws, and the cosmic order that religious authorities didn't want revealed, Jesus explained. "Today, I will show you why this book was banned from most Christian Bibles and what that means for believers." Jesus then began revealing the hidden knowledge contained in the Book of Jubilees, starting with its revolutionary understanding of sacred time. "In Jubilees," he said, "time itself is divine, created with purpose and structure." The solar calendar of 364 days revealed in Jubilees wasn't just a way to count days, it was my divine order for aligning human life with heavenly cycles. Jesus showed me how this perfect calendar consisted of exactly 52 weeks, 4 seasons of 13 weeks each, with each season containing exactly 91 days. This structure ensured that sacred days like the Sabbath and festivals always fell on the same date each year. "This isn't coincidental," Jesus explained. "It was deliberately designed to connect heaven and earth, allowing humanity to live in harmony with divine rhythms." But this knowledge was suppressed because it contradicted the lunar calendars that religious leaders had adopted from surrounding cultures. Jesus revealed that before the world was even formed, angels were created on the first day of creation. These angels were assigned specific duties by God, with some overseeing natural phenomena like the movements of the heavens, while others served as messengers and guardians of God's laws. "The angels don't just watch over humanity," Jesus said. "They control the fabric of time. When humans fall out of alignment with God's time, it leads to chaos. This theme is central to Jubilees, but was considered too threatening to religious authorities who wanted to control how people observed holy days. Jesus explained that one of the most controversial elements of the Book of Jubilees was its insistence that the world should follow a solar calendar, not the lunar calendar that many ancient cultures, including the Israelites, eventually adopted. According to Jubilees, he continued, the solar calendar is the only correct way to measure time because it aligns perfectly with God's divine order. When this system was abandoned, humanity fell out of sync with heavenly rhythms. Jesus showed me how this solar calendar is strikingly similar to the Ethiopian calendar still used today by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. It's not by chance that the Ethiopian Orthodox Church preserved the Book of Jubilees in their Bible, he said. They understood its importance in maintaining connection with divine time. The lunar calendar, Jesus explained, was seen as a corruption of this divine order. Because the lunar calendar is irregular, causing months and festivals to shift over time, it leads to spiritual disorder. Jubilees warns that following the lunar calendar is not just a mistake, it is a form of disobedience to God's will, Jesus said, showing me a passage that stated, there will be those who will surely make observations of the moon, but they will disturb the seasons and make an abominable day, the day of testimony. Jesus then revealed how the Book of Jubilees reaffirms the traditional six-day creation narrative, but goes into more detail about the first Sabbath. According to Jubilees, God didn't just rest on the seventh day, he sanctified it as a divine institution, an eternal law given to both humans and angels. The Sabbath isn't merely a day of rest, Jesus explained. It's a cosmic principle that governs the weekly cycle and ties into the larger structure of time, including the Jubilee cycles of 49 years. These cycles, he showed me, were meant to bring the world back into harmony with God's order, offering a period of rest, release, and renewal for the land, the people, and even the angelic realm. As our conversation continued, Jesus revealed that according to Jubilees, after creating Adam, God gave him specific commandments immediately, laws that included the observance of the Sabbath, purity laws, and the rules concerning marriage and worship. These laws, Jesus said, delivered by angels, were to be followed by Adam and his descendants as part of the covenant God made with humanity from the very beginning. Jesus explained that while Genesis mentions God's direct interactions with Adam, Jubilees introduces angelic beings as mediators who taught Adam how to follow God's commandments. These angels, particularly the angels of the presence, ensured that Adam and Eve understood the laws of holiness, sacrifice, and moral conduct. The angelic interaction, Jesus said, reinforced that God's law is not just a human invention but part of the heavenly order. The angels taught Adam that he must observe God's laws as an eternal covenant, just as they observe the same laws in the heavenly realm. Jesus showed me that according to Jubilees, God's laws were given to humans long before Moses received the 10 Commandments. These ancient commandments included specific instructions about worship, morality, and living in harmony with divine principles. Moving through the sacred history, Jesus revealed how Jubilees provides additional details about Cain and Abel. While Genesis tells us that Cain killed Abel, the Book of Jubilees frames this as the first major breach of God's law, a sin with spiritual consequences for all humanity. But while Cain is cast out, Jesus explained, Jubilees emphasizes that the righteous line of humanity continues through Seth, Adam's third son, who is portrayed as a figure of righteousness taught to follow the laws handed down by the angels. Jesus then showed me how Jubilees offers additional revelations about Noah and the flood. Before the flood, Jubilees delves deeper into the corruption of the earth, particularly focusing on the Nephilim, the offspring of fallen angels and human women. While Genesis briefly mentions the Nephilim, Jesus said, Jubilees provides more context, showing how these giants contributed to the wickedness that led God to cleanse the earth with the flood. Jesus revealed that this moral decay wasn't just due to human sin, but also the influence of fallen angels who produced forbidden knowledge and corrupted the natural order. After the flood, Jesus continued, Jubilees reveals that God established a new covenant with Noah that included specific laws of purity and sacrifice. Noah was instructed to observe the Sabbath and follow the same laws given to Adam about sacrifice and purity. As we moved through the biblical timeline, Jesus showed me how Jubilees takes us further back into Abraham's youth than Genesis does, revealing that Abraham grew up in a family steeped in idolatry. Genesis doesn't mention this, Jesus said, but Jubilees paints a vivid picture of a young Abraham who rejects the pagan practices around him, choosing instead to follow the one true God. Jesus showed me a scene from Abraham's youth where he confronted his father about idol worship, asking, "My father, tell me, what is this idol you worship?" When his father couldn't give a satisfactory answer, Abraham burned the idols and fled into the wilderness. While Genesis focuses on Abraham's obedience to God's call to leave his home, Jesus explained, Jubilees portrays Abraham as a revolutionary figure who made a bold stand against the idolatry of his time. One of the most striking differences Jesus revealed was that according to Jubilees, Abraham followed divine laws long before Moses was born. In Genesis, there's no mention of Abraham being given laws other than the covenant of circumcision, but in Jubilees, Abraham is presented as someone who already observed the Sabbath, made sacrifices, and followed other laws typically associated with Moses. According to Jubilees, Jesus said, "These laws weren't invented during the time of Moses, they were passed down from the angels to the patriarchs, beginning with Adam." Abraham received these commandments from angels as part of his covenant relationship with God. Jesus showed me how Jubilees portrays Abraham as part of a cosmic plan, guided by angels and following laws that are part of a divine order governing both heaven and earth. When we came to the covenant of circumcision, Jesus revealed that according to Jubilees, this wasn't just a symbolic act, it was part of a cosmic law written on the heavenly tablets. Circumcision wasn't just a sign for Abraham's descendants, Jesus explained. It was a divine law that had existed since the creation of the world, inscribed on the heavenly tablets which contain all the laws governing both angels and humans. Moving to the story of the binding of Isaac, Jesus showed me how Jubilees adds layers to this powerful narrative. In Jubilees, the test isn't just between Abraham and God, it's part of a larger spiritual warfare. According to Jubilees, Jesus revealed, the angel Mastema, a figure associated with Satan, suggested this test to God, hoping Abraham would fail. Mastema represents the forces of evil, constantly seeking to undermine the righteous. Jesus showed me how Jubilees adds that angels intervened during the binding, and God allowed the test to demonstrate that Abraham's faith was greater than the temptations of evil. This story in Jubilees, Jesus said, introduces a whole new level of spiritual significance. It's not just a test of Abraham's obedience, it's part of the cosmic battle between good and evil. As we continued through the patriarchal narratives, Jesus revealed how Jubilees expands on the prophecy concerning Jacob and Esau. While Genesis tells us that God revealed to Rebekah that the older would serve the younger, Jubilees emphasizes that this wasn't just a family feud, it was part of a cosmic design in which Jacob was always meant to inherit the blessing and continue the line of righteousness. Jubilees adds a layer of predestination, Jesus explained, revealing that Jacob was chosen from birth to carry on the covenant, while Esau was destined to stray from God's plan. Jesus showed me how Jubilees portrays Esau as more than just a brother who loses his birthright. In Jubilees, Esau represents a line of rebellion against God's chosen people. His descendants are portrayed as a nation that will oppose Jacob's line. This is part of the larger cosmic conflict that Jubilees emphasizes, Jesus said. The struggle between righteousness, represented by Jacob and Israel, and rebellion, represented by Esau and Edom. Jesus revealed that one of the most significant moments in Jacob's life, according to Jubilees, is when he receives not just the blessing from his father Isaac, but also a continuation of the divine laws passed down from Abraham. According to Jubilees, Jesus explained, after Jacob receives the blessing, God and the angels reveal to him the laws that he and his descendants must follow, including the observance of the Sabbath, purity laws, and the sacred calendar. Jesus showed me how Jubilees portrays Jacob as the keeper of these laws, responsible for ensuring that his descendants, the future Israelites, follow them as part of their covenant relationship with God. The laws Jacob receives are part of the cosmic order governing both heaven and earth, Jesus said. This elevates his role beyond just receiving a birthright. He becomes the custodian of God's eternal commandments. Jesus then revealed how Jubilees expands the conflict between Jacob and Esau into a prophetic vision of the ongoing struggle between their descendants. The book suggests that the nations arising from Esau will continually oppose Jacob's descendants throughout history, Jesus explained. This goes beyond a personal feud between brothers and ties into the idea of a spiritual battle between good and evil. According to Jubilees, Jesus showed me This spiritual opposition between Israel and the descendants of Esau plays a key role in the book's apocalyptic vision, linking the conflict to the end times. Moving to the birth of Jacob's 12 sons, Jesus revealed how Jubilees adds a layer of divine order to these births. According to Jubilees, Jesus said, the timing and sequence of these births were ordained by God to align with the sacred calendar. Each son was born according to the divine schedule, making their births part of the larger cosmic plan. Jesus showed me how Jubilees stressed that the births of the 12 sons had been written in the heavenly tablets, reinforcing that the 12 tribes were part of God's predestined plan for the world. When we came to the story of Reuben losing his status as firstborn, Jesus revealed how Jubilees expands on this event, emphasizing its spiritual consequences and explaining why Judah and Levi rise to prominence. In Jubilees, Jesus explained, Reuben's sin is framed as a violation of divine laws established long before. His actions aren't just a personal failing but a spiritual transgression that disqualifies him from leading the tribes. Jesus showed me how Jubilees emphasizes that this event aligns with the cosmic plan. Judah's rise is part of God's eternal law, and Levi is set apart for the priesthood. Speaking of Levi, Jesus revealed how Jubilees frame his role as the priestly tribe as part of an eternal mandate. According to Jubilees, Levi's priesthood was established in the heavenly tablets long before the Levitical priesthood was formalized under Moses. Levi was chosen by God to be the spiritual leader of the tribes, Jesus explained, responsible for ensuring that the divine laws were observed. His priestly role is described as part of the cosmic order. Jesus showed me how Jubilees emphasizes that Levi's role was part of God's plan from the very beginning, making the Levitical priesthood not just a response to historical circumstances, but an essential part of the cosmic order predating the events at Mount Sinai. As we move to the story of Joseph, Jesus revealed how Jubilees frames the brothers' betrayal as a serious transgression against divine order with cosmic implications. In Jubilees, Jesus explained, the act of selling Joseph is described as a great sin against God's heavenly law, with consequences extending far beyond what is depicted in Genesis. Jesus showed me how Jubilees links the brothers' actions to the future suffering of Israel under Egyptian bondage, setting the stage for God's plan to redeem the nation through the Exodus. Regarding Joseph's rise to power, Jesus revealed how Jubilees explains this was part of a divine plan written on the heavenly tablets. Joseph's success in Egypt wasn't just because of his abilities, Jesus said. It was because God had preordained his role as a savior for the Israelites as part of the heavenly design. Jesus showed me how Jubilees introduces the role of angels in guiding and protecting Joseph throughout his journey. Jubilees describes how angels were sent by God to watch over Joseph from the moment he was sold into slavery, Jesus explained, ensuring he would fulfill his destiny in Egypt. Jesus revealed how Jubilees connects Joseph's life to the Exodus, portraying it as prophetic and foreshadowing the enslavement and eventual deliverance of the Israelites. According to Jubilees, Jesus said, Joseph was aware of the future bondage of his descendants and played a role in preparing them for their eventual deliverance. Moving to Israel's enslavement in Egypt, Jesus showed me how Jubilees presents this as part of a cosmic prophecy already written on the heavenly tablets. According to Jubilees, Jesus explained, God had foretold the bondage of Israel long before it happened as part of his plan to lead them toward the Exodus and the giving of the Mosaic Law. Jesus revealed how Jubilees adds a layer of spiritual warfare to the story by introducing angels as key players in the conflict between God and Pharaoh. According to Jubilees, Jesus said, the oppression of Israel was part of a spiritual battle between the forces of good and evil. Mastema, a figure associated with Satan, is portrayed as actively working to harden Pharaoh's heart and increase Israel's suffering. Jesus showed me how Jubilees presents the plagues of Egypt as symbolic acts representing the defeat of Egypt's gods and the spiritual forces behind them. Each plague, Jesus explained, was aimed at disempowering the false gods of Egypt, demonstrating that only the God of Israel had true power over heaven and earth. When we came to Moses receiving the law, Jesus revealed how Jubilees adds the detail that these laws were already inscribed on the heavenly tablets long before Moses' time. According to Jubilees, Jesus explained, the heavenly tablets are essentially a cosmic record of all God's laws established at the very beginning of creation. Moses was simply the human recipient of laws that had been preordained for all time. Jesus showed me how Jubilees presents the Mosaic Law as part of a cosmic plan, with the laws already written in heaven, waiting for the right time to be revealed to Moses and the Israelites. One of the most fascinating aspects Jesus revealed was Jubilees' insistence that the Mosaic Law was observed long before Moses. While the traditional Bible portrays Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as righteous individuals, Jesus said, it doesn't specify that they were given the full law. Jubilees, however, claims that the patriarchs were already observing the Sabbath, performing sacrifices, and following many of the laws that would later be given to Moses. Jesus showed me how Jubilees presents the law as a timeless code given to all the righteous from Adam onward, with Moses simply being the one chosen to deliver it in its complete form to the nation of Israel. Jesus emphasized how Jubilees focuses on the cosmic calendar, with the observance of time, particularly the Sabbath, festivals, and Jubilee years, being central to the divine order. In Jubilees, Jesus explained, following this divine calendar is seen as a way of aligning with the divine rhythm of the universe. Jesus showed me how Jubilees warns that deviating from this divine calendar can lead to spiritual disorder, which is why the laws of timekeeping are so central to the Mosaic Law. This focus on the cosmic calendar, Jesus said, isn't as prominent in the traditional Bible, but Jubilees stresses that following this calendar is key to remaining in God's favor. Jesus revealed how Jubilees presents these laws as eternal, binding not only for Israel but for all generations, and even the angels. In Jubilees, Jesus explained, the laws given to Moses are meant to be observed by all of God's creation, including the angels, who are portrayed as keeping the Sabbath and observing God's festivals in heaven. Jesus showed me how this makes the Mosaic Law part of the universal order in Jubilees, extending beyond just humanity and connecting the spiritual realm to the physical realm. Moving to prophecy, Jesus revealed how Jubilees presents Israel's future as part of a divinely ordained timeline written on the heavenly tablets since the beginning of time. According to Jubilees, Jesus explained, everything that happens in human history, from creation to the final judgment, follows the cosmic schedule recorded in heaven. Jesus showed me how Jubilees provides a prophetic overview of Israel's journey, explaining that their exile, suffering, and restoration were all written in the heavenly records and must unfold according to the divine calendar. Jesus revealed how Jubilees emphasizes the role of angels in the end times, describing how they will descend to separate the righteous from the wicked. As the end of days approaches, Jesus explained, Jubilees describes how angels will gather those who have remained faithful to God's commandments, while Mastema, the leader of evil spirits, will be bound and cast into the abyss. Jesus showed me how this portrayal of angels as agents of divine justice adds a unique layer to end times prophecy in Jubilees. One of the central themes Jesus revealed in Jubilees is the prophetic vision of Israel's redemption. The book emphasizes, Jesus said, that despite Israel's rebellion and exile, God has already determined a time when they will be restored to their land and renewed in their covenant with Him. Jesus showed me how Jubilees presents this restoration as part of a predetermined timeline, with specific events already recorded in the heavenly records. Finally, Jesus revealed how Jubilees describes the coming of a messianic kingdom, where God's chosen ruler will establish righteousness on earth. The Book of Jubilees, Jesus explained, emphasizes that this kingdom will mark the end of the current age and the beginning of God's eternal rule, where the law will be upheld and the righteous will inherit the earth. After showing me these revelations from the Book of Jubilees, Jesus looked at me with profound compassion and said, "Now you understand why this book was excluded from most Christian Bibles. It reveals truths that challenge human authority and institutional control over faith." I was overwhelmed by everything I had learned, but I had to ask, why are you showing me this now? Why was I chosen to receive this revelation? Jesus smiled. The truth has been preserved for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. You've spent your life studying Scripture with an open heart, seeking the deeper truths beyond what you were taught. Now you must share what you've learned with others who are ready to hear it. But why was the Book of Jubilees specifically banned? I pressed. For several reasons, Jesus replied. First, it challenged the religious calendars adopted by both Jewish and Christian authorities. By revealing a divine solar calendar, it undermined their control over holy days and observances. Second, he continued, it revealed that the law existed long before Moses, showing that God's commandments are eternal and universal rather than specific to one time or culture. This threatened those who wanted to modify or selectively enforce these laws. Third, it exposed the role of angels and spiritual warfare in human history, revealing that there's more to reality than what religious institutions could control or explain. And finally, Jesus said, it revealed predestination and divine planning that extended beyond human comprehension, limiting the authority of those who claim to speak for God. Jesus explained that the early church fathers, particularly at the Council of Nicaea, deliberately excluded books like Jubilees because they contradicted their desire to establish uniform doctrine and practice. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church was one of the few that preserved this knowledge, Jesus said. Their calendar and traditions align more closely with the heavenly order than many Western Christian practices. As our time together drew to a close, Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder. Share what you've learned without fear. Many will reject it, as they rejected me, but some are ready for these deeper truths. The time has come for hidden knowledge to be revealed. With those words, I felt myself being drawn back through the layers of reality. There was a moment of resistance. I didn't want to leave his presence, but Jesus assured me, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Then came a sharp jolt as my consciousness reconnected with my physical body. I gasped, my lungs burning as I took my first breath. Disoriented, I found myself on a hospital bed surrounded by medical equipment and concerned faces. The attending physician later told me I had suffered a massive heart attack. My heart had stopped for 27 minutes, well beyond the time when most patients can be successfully resuscitated without brain damage. He called my recovery miraculous and medically inexplicable. In the weeks following my near-death experience, I've struggled with how to share what Jesus revealed to me. I resigned from my teaching position to focus on researching the Book of Jubilees and other excluded texts. What I've discovered has only confirmed what Jesus showed me. The Book of Jubilees contains cosmic truths about time, law, and spiritual reality that challenge mainstream religious understanding. I've started a small study group where I share these revelations with others who are open to them. Some dismiss my experience as a hallucination caused by oxygen deprivation, but others recognize the profound truth in what I'm sharing. The Book of Jubilees isn't just another excluded text, it's a window into God's cosmic plan that was deliberately obscured. Its restoration to our understanding helps align us with divine rhythms and heavenly laws that have governed creation since the beginning. If you've watched this far, perhaps you too are meant to receive this knowledge. I encourage you to study the Book of Jubilees with an open heart and mind. Look beyond what religious institutions have taught and seek the deeper truths that Jesus revealed to me. Remember that God's laws are eternal, written in the heavenly tablets before the foundation of the world. The divine calendar aligns us with cosmic rhythms. Angels are real and active in human affairs. And everything, from creation to the final judgment, follows a divine plan that was established before time began. This is the truth that was hidden from us. This is why the Book of Jubilees was banned. And this is what Jesus wanted me to share with you.